All right, so looks like we are live on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. This is the OpenJS Foundation Standards Working Group meeting for Tuesday, August 25th. Got a fun group of people here today, and we have but one item on our agenda. So before we get started, let me ask those here if there is, first off, any announcements for today? Announcements. No more foundation meetings this week. Quiet meeting week, which is cool. We do have some new CPC members who have joined that we shared on the previous call earlier today. So we want to shout out and welcome Mary and Darcy and Marcine, and also Evgeny from HAVJS. And then the other exciting news, in case you missed it, was that Michael Dawson has been re-elected the community director from the CPC for the OpenJS Board of Directors. So we're really excited there, and that's kind of the big announcement stuff. Expect some blog posts too about some of that. All right. And as I said, we've got one agenda item. So before we proceed with that, is there any other business we want to put on the agenda today?
Do we want to talk about the meeting time for this meeting in case the CPC meeting doesn't change anything here?
Yes, thank you for reminding me, Emily. Meeting time. Cool. Oh, and I guess the last thing I will ask is just to put your name in the attendees list on the notes doc, which I just popped into chat. Right on. Thanks. Oh, and then Robin shared this before the call. We also have a new member of the standards working group who was unable to make it today, but plans to join soon. Michael Champion, who is in fact a champion, like a legit champion of web standards. I'm so excited that Michael will be joining us. I think we're gonna really get a lot out of his participation and his experience, especially in the W3C space. So thank you, Robin, for recruiting Michael.
Yes, 2 thumbs up. He is a champ for sure.
Yeah.
Lucky to have him.
Very lucky. All right, cool. So we start with issue number 102, which is proposals for TC39. And let me drop that in the chat. We had a wonderful discussion about this last week with Gus, and Gus indicated at that point that it was pretty clear to them what the next step on their side would be. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure if there's any further action on it that we want to do to track it. And for that, I might ask Miles what he thinks, if he's able to.
Hello. So what more specifically would you be interested in me filling in here?
Well, so I think we had a great discussion on our last meeting about just sort of like what our expectations are, you know, because this was the first example of somebody from the project community bringing forward a couple of ideas here for the broader committee. And I think we made it fairly clear that our role is really to help facilitate conversations with interested parties and interested stakeholders, but not necessarily to put a proposal out that was, you know, an OpenJS Foundation proposal, but rather, you know, proposals that are enthusiastically, considered by members of the OpenJS Foundation, which is like slightly different. I think where I'm not sure if we have further action is whether we want to track this in any way, or like, help make sure that to the extent that it's supportive to Gus, they're able to get calls or conversations or these things surfaced in, say, our newsletters or blog, or what exactly we want to be doing to that end. So I think that's my question. If I could formulate a question, I think that's what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that as a working group, and sorry if there's noise, I'm sitting outside and it's very Manhattan around me. I think that there's a couple different things that we could look into here. I think to your point, it's not really our place. It's not really our place to say what proposals can and can't go, right? But I do think that maybe where there is a gap right now that we could fill would be like similar to how we talked about, like, hey, there's like a process that you can follow if you want to object to something. Here's how you could maybe do it. I think that maybe similarly for a proposal, we should at least set the requirements for like, hey, here's like the minimal expectations of like what we expect you, the delegate, to do. I also think that in a case of Gus, there's an interesting thing here where like in one case, Gus is the delegate from OpenJS to TC39, in which case he represents like all the foundation projects in his attendance, in their attendance. But also at the same time, Gus is representing Node.js, and the proposals are more likely coming from Node, not from OpenJS. So I think in Gus's case, it's a little interesting because this is like kind of like conflating the two different positions that he's playing as both kind of like the delegate to represent this and the individual who's interested in pursuing it. But let's say it like wasn't Gus who was coming up with this proposal. Like, what would be the process by which that individual could bring these things forward? So I think on like our end, like that kind of process is somewhere that we have room to kind of like explore and improve to make sure that kind of everything is on the up and up. And it may very well be, any proposals that want to go. That could be the extent of governance that we have. But I think that kind of falls on us to clarify. And from, Gus's position, then maybe we just need to like create a venue for them to solicit this feedback if they're interested in getting from the foundation projects prior to bringing it.
I think that makes sense as sort of kind of distilling that into like tactical things that we can do. One is documenting more clearly like the expected, kind of process for proposals, whether that proposal is coming from Node or coming from message format or, Node-RED or whatever. So documentation, and then also an action of creating the forum for broader input and feedback beyond that specific project. And I feel like that seems like good places to put energy and get started. What do y'all think?
It seems like a good first step.
I think that this is a bit adjacent to this, but it's on my mind just because I'm an AC rep at the W3C, and Brian Cardell is our AC rep here. There are a handful of things that we voted on at the W3C in the last couple of months: new patent policy and the new process document and things like that. And I think those are cases where a representative is expected to actually cast a ballot on behalf of the organization. And so perhaps similarly to that venue for soliciting feedback on, say, a tech proposal for TC39, we need a venue for soliciting or sharing information about an upcoming vote and getting the sign off necessary to cast like the official vote, which is not some, there's no impending vote right now that we need to respond to or anything like that. It's just sort of a okay, any other thoughts on issue 102 for those two proposals? I think I also might take an action to just check in with Gus, see if they need anything. All right, so that brings us to, actually, I thought of another ad hoc thing. If I can put, if Donovan doesn't mind me putting us on the spot, which is just reporting on TC53 activities here in just a minute. So meeting time, that was one that Emily reminded me that we should bring up. So we've been taking this 1800 UTC time slot every other week. It's been pretty consistently good for us, but it's possible that we want to either add an alternating time or change it up a bit to allow more flexibility for the larger CPC meeting. I don't remember which direction we were, Emily, I think on the CPC call, you might have been suggesting that we move this call a little earlier. Was that right?
My main gist of why I thought we should talk about this is that at least for the next couple of weeks, the OpenJS monthly call, the one that is on this day in 2 weeks and in 4 weeks, is going to be 2 hours earlier than normal. And this means that there's not going to be a sort of hour gap, but there's going to be a 3-hour gap between the meetings, between the CPC meeting and the standards meeting. And I don't really have an opinion on what's the right thing to do here, or if we should do anything at all. Mainly, I just wanted to surface the fact that, hey, this thing is happening, and to figure out if we need to react to it at all.
Well, I'm for moving it earlier out of respect for your time zones. You can, have them back to back. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Also, I'd like to know that if I get to have them back to back, so does everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good idea to go back to back. But on the other hand, if we can move in that direction if you decided to host the CPC meeting consistently for that time. We move the CPC meeting earlier. If we decide that we are going to do that consistently, then maybe we can decide to move this meeting into an earlier spot. But we are just trying it out for 2 weeks. So for the next 2 weeks, can we just stay on the same time? And then probably if we decided to go there, then we can move this meeting. What do you think? Would that make sense there?
I'm very flexible. I really honestly don't have a super strong opinion about it, other than to agree that it may be easier for people to have especially those who attend both the CPC meeting and this meeting, to do those back to back, because it's just a chunk of time that then becomes easier to block off. The gap in between is sometimes just tough. But other than that, I would defer to those who are in time zones that are often underrepresented and get, you know, get the short end of the stick, which, you know, always feel bad about.
On my part, I don't really care either way. As you may have observed, I picked up a habit of going on a walk while doing these conferences, and as you might be able to observe, it's not as bright here as it used to be during the summer. So the loss here will be that I'll be, you know, more and darker as the year goes on.
Well, and colder, and eventually the weather may not cooperate with your walks. So anyway, no, I think it's lovely that you go on the walks during these meetings. I'm always slightly jealous, to be frank. So Sindel, so sorry, you were suggesting that we wait for the experiment for a couple of weeks to see how the CPC experiment goes, and then if they plan to stick with it, we adjust the meeting time to go back to back. Was that correct?
Yeah, that is the yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, I support that. That makes sense to me.
Sounds good to me too.
All right, so that takes to the last unscheduled but also interesting ad hoc item, which is just a quick update on TC53 activities, because we had a TC53 meeting, I can say that word, TC53 meeting mid last week, and the committee's making a lot of progress on its very first specification. I wonder if Donovan, you want to add anything or share anything if you're in a position to do that?
Sure, I could just you mentioned that they're working on, I think it's 3 or 4 different specifications for host, for IO, and then for built-in providers. Those are the major ones. Oh, the sensor class pattern is the other one. They are still kind of running through the first draft. I've asked the chair if he was ready to start inviting people who are participating in projects and maybe interested in what's going on with TC53, and he said he'd like to get through this first draft first and then start soliciting input from others.
So
the rate it's going, I think we'll be done reviewing within a month or so.
So do you think that's something we'll want to share with like some of our project communities to get input on and kind of share like that level of sharing, or, you know, what level of sharing?
I think it would be interesting to make an announcement and try and find a way to identify which projects would be interested. You know, there's some that have a tangential relationship with what's going on. Not too many that are, you know, directly involved. I can't think of any hardware projects in the OpenJS Foundation, but they do. You know, it's heavily influenced by the work of TC39, and there's a lot of things that are in the specifications from TC53 that maybe haven't even made it to final at TC39 yet. So there's a lot of overlap in that sense.
So I think that's something we'll share in about a month or so, maybe a tiny bit longer, when it's ready to get out. But I think TC53 is like a really great place to get involved. Not to totally plug TC53, but I'm totally going to do that right now, because it's a newer committee, but the tech for people is probably going to be somewhat familiar, and I think there's a opportunity for high impact and also getting started. Oh, bye Miles, thanks for joining. So if you're interested in kind of getting involved in a relatively new group, low pressure, you know, lots of fun sort of environment, I think it's a great group. So And they spoke at OpenJS and they did a great job.
Cool. I love the idea of us being a forum to share information for the projects on this, and we can do it a number of ways. You could bring it to a CPC and have it as an agenda. We could do something on our YouTube channel, an interactive session, kind of like the AMAs. So really, sky's the limit on how we want to share that information. We can survey folks and see who's interested, and we can go to their meetings and share information on maybe the big ones.
Awesome.
No,
All right. Well, those are the 3 things that we had. Any other business for today?
Did we have a blog coming on Unicode from Ben?
From Ben. That's a thing to check in with Ben on the Unicode blog.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no other business, I'm going to stop our live stream.